everybody and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm doing the mid-year book tag, which Larry Reed started last year, and I actually did do it last year, but I saw her do it again this year, so I decided to hop on the trend. I have so many more books that I want to talk about that didn't fit into these answers. I try not to pick multiple books per question, so if you want to see more about my favorites and things that I read in 2024, you can check out my monthly reading wrap-ups. And I also did a video a week ago talking about my top 10 books of 2024, so feel free to check that one out too. My reading month this year has honestly been kind of disappointing. I've read a lot of books, but not a lot of standouts, and I live for that 5-star feeling, but I feel like I picked the books that best represented each question. Without further ado, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, and let's get started. So the first book is the best book you've read so far in 2024, and there are 2 books that I could put for this one, but there is one standout and one book that is so obviously my favorite book I read this year, and that is Magnolia Parks Into the Dark. She is huge, and I could have read a book that would double the size of this. Honestly, this book is so good. If you don't know, this is actually, I think, the 5th book in the Magnolia Parks series. There are 3 books specifically following Magnolia and her love interest, BJ, and this is the last one of their story. So this was a very emotionally charged story. The other books in the series is more fun and gossipy, but this one is definitely heavier and made me cry like a baby. I actually have a whole reading vlog. I'll link it down below if you want to watch it. It's kind of embarrassing because I was crying throughout the entire time reading this book. I was a mess, but genuinely so perfect, so amazing. 6 stars. I don't think that this series can do any wrong for me. Magnolia Parks is like Gossip Girl set in London. You're just following rich people be rich people and their relationships and the toxicities, but it's just so addicting and amazing. This one, like I said, was heavier, and I just felt like I was just so lucky to be reading this. So check out my reading vlog down below, but without a doubt, best book of the year. The next question, the best sequel I've read this year, and that is also without a doubt Keeping 13 by Chloe Walsh. This is part of the Boys of Tommen series. I read the whole thing. I discovered it this year. So mad at myself that I hadn't read it before, but this is absolutely amazing. There's 5 books so far in the series, and this one is the 2nd book. So this followed Johnny and Shannon. They are in high school. Shannon moves schools because she is really horrifically bullied, and her and Johnny develop a love story, but there's just a lot of trauma in these books. I would definitely suggest looking at the trigger warning before you read these books, but they're so emotionally charged. They're classified as YA, but I really wouldn't think that it's a YA romance. I don't think I would have been able to handle this when I was 15, 16 years old, but it's just so beautiful. And the way that these characters find each other, the found family, the love in this book, oh my god, it's just so amazing. It's so amazing. It's so good. I highly recommend reading the Boys of Tommen series. It is one of the best things I've read in my entire life. It is very, very heavy and honestly pretty hard to read, but it's just so amazing. It feels so real. Don't be intimidated like I was by the tiny text and the long books. I promise you, by the time you get to the end of it, you're gonna want more. Okay, the next question is a new release that I haven't read yet, but I want to, and that is The Ministry of Time. I don't know what this book is about because literally look at the cover. Like, that doesn't give me anything about what it's about, but I also don't want to know what it's about. I have heard so many people talk about how amazing it is and just how good the book is, how it's one of their favorites that they've read so far this year, and I kind of want to go in blind. So that book is on hold for me from the library, but I was like 15th in line, and now I think I'm like number 4 or 5. So this book is definitely at the top of my TBR. The next one is my most anticipated release of the year. A lot of my most anticipated releases have already come out, but the one that is left to come out is without a doubt Reckless by Lauren Roberts. I loved Powerless. I thought that was so good. I see mixed reviews. Like, my sister gave it 1 star. She hated it. I gave it 5. Definitely go to show how subjective reading is, but I just thought it was so good. I just loved it. I don't care if it was cheesy, if the writing wasn't the best. and the most nuanced, and the characters weren't fleshed out enough. I just thought it was so good. So I can't wait to read Reckless. If you read Powerless, you know that that one ended like really crazy, and I just need to know. I just need to know what happened. Okay, the next question is the biggest surprise, and I'm going to go for This Summer Will Be Different by Carly Fortune. I have a reading vlog where I read this. I'll link it down below. I didn't know if I was gonna love this because her second book I didn't really like. I didn't like the tropes. I didn't really like the writing style, just the things that she did in her second book. It was called Meet Me at the Lake, I believe. It just didn't hit the boxes, and I was very sad about that book. But I just love Carly Fortune. I don't know what it is about her that makes me so drawn to her. I follow her on Instagram. I just love her. So I decided to read it, and I love this book. This was an easy 5 stars. I still think about this, and I think a lot of summer romances are kind of the same, and they follow the same pattern. I see the argument that this is kind of reminiscent of everything that we've already seen before. However, this is just done perfectly. Setting, it's just absolutely beautiful. I felt like I was there when I was reading this book. I love the conflict in this book, and I got really good payoff. I just loved all the choices that she made in this, and this is just perfect to me. I was very pleasantly surprised. Absolutely love this book. You have to read it, and it's just so beautiful. Look at it. The next question is my favorite new author that I discovered, and that would be Nicola Yoon. She wrote Instructions for Dancing, The Sun is Also a Star, and Everything Everything. I rated all of those books. I mean, there's only 3 of them, but I rated them all 4 stars, and I have just really enjoyed my experience reading her books. I think she's coming out with a new book, or there's a new book of her that just came out, so I'm gonna have to read that one. But I just really like her writing style. It is easy to digest, it is funny, it is inquisitive. The themes and the ideas of her books are so next level, but she writes them in a way that's so easy to understand, and I just really enjoyed my time. I didn't watch any of her movies. I knew that the movies had came out like years ago when they did, but I had never really watched them, and I'm not going to because the books were so good, and I just know the movies are not going to live up to that. I was truly so shocked by the way some of her books ended and the twists and the turns they took, and I just love her and need her to release more books. Okay, next is my newest fictional crush. Now, I really had to think about this one because I had a couple of different answers, but then I had to sit down and be like, wait, not if they're hot, who would I actually want to like be my boyfriend? Because some of the guys that I was thinking about originally are definitely problematic. So I decided to go with Justin from Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. Another one of my favorites of the year, an easy 5 stars. It was just so good, and the reason why Justin is my fictional crush is because of a very specific scene in this book where the love interest Emma is sick, and she's kind of on an island. She's very hard to get to when it's storming outside, but she's so sick, and he does everything in his power, everything, I'm telling you, he does everything to get to her and make her feel better, and oh my god, that is the type of energy that I need in my life. Everything that Justin did in this book, I'm like swooning over. I'm an acts of service gal, and this was an acts of service book. He is an acts of service guy, and I love Justin, and he's my new fictional crush. If you want to know what I want in my life, what I'm manifesting, it is Justin from this book. Okay, next is a book that made me cry, and it's honestly a reread that I read last year, and I cried so hard. I cry a lot with books. There were a lot of different books that made me cry, but I don't really see this book talked about enough, so I want to bring it up again. It's a reread, and I sobbed like a baby the second time I read it, just as hard as I did the first time, and that is I Fell in Love with Hope by Lan Colley. I reread this, number 1, because I wanted to, but number 2, because I was annotating it for my best friend, and I have heard a lot of negative things about this book, and just the way that it was written and the way that the author uses a bunch of cliches, and it's like every single inspirational quote in a book, but I don't care. I really don't care. This is one of my favorite books of all time. She is just amazing, and I think that this resonated so hard because I relate to it a lot. So this book is about a bunch of sick children in a hospital, and basically just their lives living in the hospital and battling things. And oh my god, this book came to me last year when I had to go to the hospital for a really intense thing, and it just really hit me out of nowhere. Sobbed, loved this book. Gave it 5 stars then. Then I heard a bunch of criticism about it, but I was like, I'm gonna reread it again and annotate it for my best friend, and I still loved it. I don't care what people say. I think this is one of the best books ever, and I think that if you are struggling with maybe health issues or you go to the hospital a lot, read this book. It's really good, and I don't hear enough people talking about it like they should. The next question is a book that made me happy, and that would be the Green Bone Saga. So the first book would be Jade City. Oh my god, I love this entire trilogy, and I think the reason why it made me so happy is because it was just so well done, and I was just so in awe and in love with the human race after reading that trilogy, because I was like, how can a single human think of all of this stuff? This is a fantasy book about 2 clans kind of battling it out, and throughout the trilogy we followed this long stretch of time, so many characters, so many intense politics, and they fight using jade. That's their power source, basically. They have the jade, and then they can fight like crazy, and it is so good. Like, it is so good. You don't know where this book is going. Like, I promise you, you have no idea. You'll think that the book is going this way, it'll actually go that way. It's actually so crazy, and it just made me so happy because it's just genuinely so good. I think some of the best writing ever. If you are looking to get more into fantasy, maybe you've read a lot of fantasy romantasy, if you will, and you want to get more into that hard like fantasy and you don't know where to start, I would start with the Green Bone Saga. Okay, next is the most beautiful book that I bought this year, and it has to be Magnolia Park. Like, I try not to repeat books, but come on, like, how is this gonna be beat? It's just not. It's just so beautiful. I actually bought all of the Magnolia books and the Daisy books in these covers, and best purchase of my life. It's just so good. And then the last question is, what book do you need to read by the end of the year? And that is Renegade by Marissa Meyer. This has been on my list for a long time. I actually asked for the trilogy for Christmas. I got it for Christmas, and then now, like halfway through the year, it's still sitting on my TBR cart. So I definitely need to get through this. I think the problem is when I have a lull in time when I'm like, I don't really know what exactly I'm going to be reading. Instead of picking up a book that I already have, like Renegade, I'll like go to the library or I'll buy a new book, and it's just not good. So I definitely need to read this, and hopefully the entire trilogy by the end of the year. Alright, that is it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.